Penalty by Perception by Artillery, Danish group, Danish thrash metal band. Danish thrash metal band that's been around since the 1980s, where album covers like this one existed. Oh boy. It's obviously gotten a lot better. The music itself, however, and the band themselves, they're considered to be a very important part of the thrash puzzle. They're considered to be one of the groups that is not as well known throughout the first and second wave of thrash metal. However, they certainly paved the way for the genre to have continued success, not to mention continued relevance. And this is a group that is now within actually their second comeback, so their third era. However, one could say that there's been a separate era within the third era that has begun with their last album and continues with this one. Confusing, I know. Which is the Metal Blade era. So this is their second album on Metal Blade Records, and let me tell you, just out of the gate, the way in which Metal Blade is able to really aid with some of the production value and really just give it that big, dense, larger-than-life sound certainly gives Artillery this real sense and this real tone like they are reinvigorated. Think about how you felt whenever you heard perhaps Violent Revolution by Creator, either that or some of the comeback albums from bands such as Exodus. It has sort of that same, swagger whenever it walks to it. Now, is it necessarily that same direct thrash approach? Not really. This is one that has a little bit of a technical side behind it. It's very minor, something that's almost in the background more so than right there in the forefront, but it is something that does exist. And Artillery's command of the time in which they ask of you is one that's done through terrific riffing. It's done through great song structure, and there's always something a little bit unique about these songs. Live by the Sky, for example, the very second track on this disc, is one that starts off sounding like it's going to be just a thrash fest until it gets to an extremely catchy and well-crafted chorus segment. This is actually the track that I would call the highlight of the first part of this album, and I say that because there is a highlight to the second part. It is a very well-crafted song. It's what you would expect from a second track, one that has sort of an anthemic feel to it, one that is going to give you the ability and the desire to want to bang your head around a little bit on a thrash record, and it sets up what you get with the title track that follows with Mercy of Ignorance, either that or Rights of War, which follow it. So you can think very much of Live by the Sky as a way in which this album is able to pick up steam and pick up momentum. The first track sort of gets it, flowing down the train tracks, while Live by the Sky gives it the opportunity to make it to full ramming speed. And it's very well crafted. I love the vocals on this album. The vocals on this album are absolutely fantastic. If you listen to some of the stuff that they did in the 80s or even the 90s or just even recently, this is an album that just seems, feels, and listens like it's very, very focused, very well crafted, and everything is sort of operating at top speed and at top quality. So moving on to the second half of this disc, we have When the Magic is Gone. And this is where things get a little bit interesting. This is where things get a little bit, well, it's going to be a love it or hate it philosophy, I feel, for a lot of people, considering this is a song that reminds me very much of like a Prisoners of Fate by Heathen, where it is a bit ballady. It has a little bit of that more softer variety to it, softer register to it, but it's also one that still does have a lot of depth, a lot of density, a lot of ass behind it. So this song has almost the power of a hard rock track, maybe something that you would expect from a group such as Accept. And it's just really well crafted, really well done, and it's a track that honestly feels very much like the highlight of the second half, principally because of its difference. Though going on with the remaining couple of songs, 4 in fact off of this disc, such as Cosmic Brain, getting into Deity Machine and Path of the Atheist, you're getting into that same riff fest thrashy territory that you were getting prior to the sort of hard rock interruption of When the Magic is Gone. I like, though, that song is present. Just the same as I like the fact that Prisoner of Fate was present off of the Heathen album Victims of Deception. I like whenever bands are willing to sort of take that little step to do something a bit different. And a lot of people say the same thing about Fade to Black by Metallica, and it's a fair assessment. The same might also be stated for, it was right there in my head and just disappeared, but there's another track by Metallica that has sort of that same feel to it as well. I believe it's off of Master of Puppets. I'm blanking Congratulations to Master of Puppets by being the first one that's being preserved by the governments. Yay. Okay. Anyhow, getting back to what this album means. Artillery is a group whose their place, their purpose, and their legend is among thrash fans. It's among a very narrow group of thrash fans, those that actually know them. There's a very large swath of individuals in this world that are unaware of not only what Artillery did for the genre in the 80s and moving forward into the 90s after a long hiatus. There's a large group that does not know. There's a large group that is unaware. A large group that really has only scratched the surface of what thrash really was. And we're going to speak about another band that's within the Thrashiverse here coming in a couple of hours, so stay tuned for that. But this group is really reinventing the wheel here, and they're not doing so by reinventing thrash metal. They're not even doing that by reinventing their own career. They're reinventing the wheel through their energy, through their power, through their passion. This is an album that commands you through its energy and commands you through just how fresh it sounds. If you didn't know that Artillery was a group that started in the 1980s, you would have swore up and down that they were just a veteran of a couple of albums, maybe 1, 2, 3 at the most, where they're just starting to hit their songwriting stride. This is one that's well crafted and kind of elegant in places, so you have to really check this one out. It's actually more of a sight to behold than you might think. 84 out of 100 on this album. I really love the production of this disc. Typically, I'm neither tit for tat about how production value has been updated for groups, but this is something that for Artillery makes them just sound so massive and so boombastic. It's kind of like listening to a couple of recent Sodom albums and hearing how elevated production and elevated volume just makes them sound like a fucking freight train. Same thing really happens with Artillery, although not quite as speedy of a freight train or large of a freight train. It doesn't have spiked barbs and large nuclear, RPG launchers that are just everywhere, and chainsaws. Okay, maybe there's a chainsaw. Come on, Bruce Campbell probably would love these guys. 84 out of 100. I want to know what you guys think, though, about Artillery. Penalty by Perception. Let me know in the comments below. And I don't know what day it is whenever you're watching this, but today is actually, for the day I'm recording this, is Easter. I know some of you, a lot of you, it's nothing to you, but for those of you who do celebrate a holiday today, or whether it be the day that you're watching this or the day this is recorded, I hope you have a happy one. That's all I have to say about that. Let me know what you think about this album in the comments. I'm coverkillernation. I'll talk to you later. Peace.